SLT අලුත් මෙගා ලයින් කනෙක්ෂන් වලට 50%ක දීවන. තවත් ඔෆර් ගැන දැනගන්න 12112 අමතන්න.
Smooth sailing. The third reading of the Budget Proposal 2019 passes in Parliament. Broken dreams. What SLFP's move means for anti-UMP coalition talks. The silver lining. The Minister of Finance finds room to laud reconciliation even amidst the ETI crisis.
We should be proud that the Tamil diaspora is now feeling comfortable enough to make such large investments in Sri Lanka.
Resuscitating efforts. The management of the national carrier announces a 5-year strategic plan to revive its fortunes. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Friday, the 5th of April 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to First at 9, AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now moving on to our top story tonight. The third reading of the Budget Proposal 2019 took place today, with it passing with a 45-vote majority in Parliament. The United National Party, Tamil National Alliance and Sri Lanka Muslim Congress voted in favour of the budget, whereas parliamentarians representing the joint opposition and Janata Vimukta Peramuna voted against it. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party, however, refrained from voting, while some were even absent from the House during the vote.
Budget proposal for the remainder of 2019 was presented to Parliament by Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira on the 5th of March. Its second reading passed in Parliament with a 43-vote majority on the 12th of last month. Afterwards, the committee stage debate for the budget took place for 19 days, where the expenditure heads for all the ministries were taken up. What is significant, however, is that the expenditure heads for the Ministries of Internal, Home Affairs, Provincial Councils and Local Government, as well as Megapolis and Western Development, were defeated by the opposition on the 28th of last month. Following the defeat, the opposition expressed confidence in defeating the Budget Proposal 2019 following its third reading in Parliament. With the third reading set for today, a number of parliamentarians were on the fence and discussions continued in the opposition, involving all the factions within the UPFA to determine a course of action. A discussion was held between the President and the opposition leader last evening, and it ended without a final decision. During the final meeting between the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and the United People's Freedom Alliance this morning, the SLFP decided to refrain from voting, whereas the rest of the UPFA constituting the joint opposition decided to vote against. Meanwhile, a supplementary estimate of 287 billion rupees for the two defeated expenditure heads was passed in Parliament today. Making the final remarks following the committee stage debate over the expenditure head of Ministry of Finance, the subject minister revealed measures taken by the government to resolve the issues of ETI depositors.
The rupee has now appreciated by 4.5 since January of this year, and it is now amongst the top 3 best performing currencies in the world. The ETI depositors will be paid their third tranche of their capital before the Sinhala Tamil New Year. In fact, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has just announced that Blue Summit Capital of Singapore, Ben Holdings Limited of Sri Lanka have just completed remitting the final tranche of $16 million to ETF, bringing their total investment for selected assets of ETI to $70 million. These funds will now be used by ETIF, which is under central bank management, to pay a further 10% of capital outstanding to all depositors before the Sinhala Tamil New Year holidays. This brings the total capital repaid to all depositors to 30% of their deposit value. In addition, ETI continues to pay interest payments at the CBSL directed rate to all depositors. The CBSL has also provisionally approved a recovery business plan for ETI and Swarnamahal Financial Services Limited from Isuna Investments and Informatics, and it is now awaiting implementation. The fact that a major player in the international mobile industry, Leica Mobile of the UK, owned by a Sri Lankan Tamil businessman who is possibly the major shareholder of these investing companies, should not be a reason to character assassinate him or his company. We should be proud that the Tamil diaspora is now feeling comfortable enough to make such large investments in Sri Lanka. All required precautions and clearances have been duly obtained by CBSL before such approval. In addition, Central Bank, following due process, have also filed action against the directors of ETI and SFS. In addition, the ETI and SFS issues first emerged as far back as 2011. Please listen to this. The then government failed to find any solution at that time or after that.
In the vote which followed, 119 parliamentarians voted in favour of the budget proposal 2019, while only 74 parliamentarians voted against it. Accordingly, the third reading of the budget passed with a majority of 45 votes. United National Party, Tamil National Alliance and Sri Lanka Muslim Congress voted in favour of the budget, along with UPFA's Muthu Sivalingam and Vijit Vijayamuni Soiza. UNP's Venerable Athuraliye Ratanathera, Ashoka Priyantha, Dunesh Gankanda and Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and TNA's Sivasakti Anandan, however, were not seen in the House of Parliament. The rest of the UPFA, making up the joint opposition and the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, voted against the budget, while MPs of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party refrained from voting. That said, parliamentarians S.B. Disanayaka, Dilan Pereira, Susil Premajayantha, Chandima Veerakkodi, Lakshman Yapa Abewardana, Lakshman Vasantha Pereira, Anuradha Jayaratna, Sudarshini Fernando Pillai, Anura Priyadarshana Yapa and T.B. Ekanayaka cast their vote against the budget. However, SLF peers Dayasiri Jayasekara, Mahinda Amaravira, Duminda Disanayaka, Nimal Siripala De Silva, Ranjit Siambalapitiya, Dushmanta Mitrapala, Sriyani Vijay Vikrama, Nishanta Muthu Hettigama, Veerakumara Disanayaka, Mahinda Samarasinghe, Dr. Sarath Amunugama, Tilanga Sumatipala and Kadir Massan were absent. Arumugam Thondaman meanwhile was also absent from the House.
In the meantime, parliamentarians from the government and the opposition expressed their views on the budget vote following today's parliamentary session.
Although the president expresses views against the government wherever he goes, his stance was not depicted through today's vote. It could have been better had everyone of the SLFP joined us to vote against it. It is clear that their decision was an indirect support of the UNP government. There is no link between the budget vote and the ongoing discussions with the SLFP. A lot of SLFPs refraining from voting hindered an opportunity to stand against the government. We are very upset that the SLFP is unfortunately with a group who are not sensitive to the issues of the general public. The entire parliament proved that the opposition is bankrupt. The divide of the SLFP should end. We believe the two presidents should come to a common agreement. Majority of Mahinda Rajapaksha's 51-day government did not attend today's parliament to defeat the budget. It shows that UPFA is not a group which has a common stance. SLFP has the right to say their stance, but they will see the results of what they did when they go to village level. I voted against the budget. We are all very much united. Therefore, those who wanted to come came and voted against it, and those who wanted stayed at home. The SLFPers who protect democracy and are against nepotism refrain from voting today. They will all join us in the future. This government is the President's and not the Prime Minister's. The President should therefore be responsible because this must be a decision taken by him. However, we are doing everything to make the ongoing discussions a success. We will enter the final battle with a united group.
UPFA parliamentarian Kanchana Wijesekara meanwhile is sceptical over the future of talks centred on forming a broader anti-UNP coalition with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. With the SLFP deciding to refrain from voting on the budget proposal 2019, MP Wijesekara told First at 9 that he does not see a future with the SLFP.
This is not something new, but it's unfortunate because we don't see any future coalition that has been talked about in the last 3-4 months after leaving the national government. There was a dialogue for a broader coalition against the UNP government, but I don't think those meetings can go forward. But we appreciate the fact that a few SLSP members even went out of the way disregarding the party decision and voted against the budget. We raised the question about how much they're going to put effort into this coalition that they're talking about. But now we have understanding that a few members who are with the SLSP actually will probably end up doing politics with the UNP leadership. For them to pave the way to do their politics, I think unfortunate that the entire SLSP leadership took this decision. What they did today in Parliament was actually giving another boost for the UNP government to go ahead in the Parliament, because the UNP government doesn't have a clear majority in Parliament without the support of the TNA. We would like to invite the members of the SLSP to make a decision on who they are going to align with.
With it being the final day of the committee stage debate on the Budget Proposal 2019, expenditure head of the Ministry of Finance was taken up for debate in Parliament today. Parliamentarians of the opposition directed the attention of the Speaker towards the delay in taking measures to hold provincial council elections at the inception of today's proceedings.
During the last party leaders meeting, you presented a letter which was directed to you by the chairman of the Election Commission on behalf of the Commission. The letter read that if the provincial council elections are to be held before August, the relevant amendments need to be presented to Parliament before the 5th of April, which is today. It further read that if the amendments are not duly presented in Parliament, the Commission will resort to legal proceedings. The first thing I want to highlight is that I don't see those amendments in today's parliamentary agenda. The presidential election must be held by the 7th of December, and October 5th is the last day to announce the election. If the amendments are not presented to Parliament today, the provincial council elections can't be held this year. The stance of the United National Party from the beginning was to hold the elections under the old system. It is the SLFP faction which wanted a new electoral system. The new system is incomplete, and now we need an amendment even to hold elections under the old system. Had the old system been adopted, elections could have been held 6 months ago. We expected to hold elections under a new electoral system which doesn't have the preferential votes, although we were unable to do it. However, we later suggested to hold elections under the old system. There is an issue with the candidate of the next presidential election as well. That is why you're delaying the elections. Everyone, including the president, agrees to this. There is no connection to the presidential election. This is the provincial council election.
Actor Ryan Van Rooyen, who arrived in Sri Lanka last night after he was deported from Dubai, has been remanded until the 11th of this month for possession of cannabis. The actor's deportation comes following his recent arrest in Dubai, along with drug kingpin Markandre Madush. He was questioned by the Criminal Investigation Department and the Police Narcotics Bureau at the Bandaranaike International Airport for 18 hours and was later handed over to the Valigama Police at 3 this morning. Ryan Van Rooyen, who was found guilty of possessing 750 milligrams of cannabis, was produced before the Matra Magistrates Court today and was ordered to be placed in remand custody until the 11th of this month. Meanwhile, 4 other suspects who were deported along with Ryan Van Rooyen, identified as Mohammad Wasim Deen, Dimutu Pereira, W. Suraj Kavinda De Silva and Charit Kodikara, were released today after they were questioned by relevant authorities. In a backdrop where the Tamil National Alliance called for the Sri Lankan government to take measures to address war crimes by way of inviting foreign judges, convener of the Patriotic Professionals Forum, Dr. Nalaka Gudaheva, says that there are multiple parties who should be held accountable, including the Tamil National Alliance. Speaking to First at 9, Dr. Gudaheva says that Sri Lanka's judiciary is well equipped to deal with its own internal issues.
When Geneva Resolution 30/1 spoke about the need to introduce foreign judges to the Sri Lankan judiciary system, that was to establish confidence about the Sri Lankan judiciary system. This is one of the most ridiculous arguments because Sri Lankan judiciary system is more than 100 years old. It's a time-tested system and there's absolutely no need for somebody to come and say that the confidence level has to be increased with regard to this system. When you talk about accountability, if anyone has to be held accountable for what happened during the latter part of the war, that has to be two ways. It can't be one way. Now, during the war, we remember how TNA stood with Prabhakaran, supported Prabhakaran, accepted Prabhakaran as the sole representative of the Tamil nation, and acted as the representative of Prabhakaran in the civil society. Anybody who supports terrorism should also be held accountable for the crimes committed by the terrorists. So in that regard, TNA is also very much responsible for the crimes committed by the LTT. So they also have blood in their hands. Now also when you talk about accountability, you must remember that more than 11,000 LTT cadres were rehabilitated after the war. And the government took a policy decision not to prosecute a single child soldier. And most of these LTT cadres were child soldiers. If they were to be held accountable, half of these people would be in jail, even now. But that's not the way Sri Lankan government has acted, and I think that's the way, the right way to go forward, because the hatred can never be appeased by hatred, as Lord Buddha said.
Now, Sri Lanka seems to have no escape from the soaring heat, as the sun is set to position straight over the country for 10 days starting from today. The Department of Meteorology said that the northward movement of the sun will result in it being positioned directly over the latitudes of Sri Lanka.
According to the Department of Meteorology, sun will be directly positioned over Sri Lanka on 2 occasions this year. The sun will shine straight upon Sri Lanka from today to the 15th of April, and the second occasion will be from the 27th of August to the 7th of September this year. The sun was positioned over the areas of Dikwella, Kakanadura, Kotavila and Medigama at around 12 past noon today. Sun is set to shine directly upon the areas of Ahungalla, Ganegoda, Kalubovitiana, Katavala, Valalgoda, Suriyavawa and Galkaduwa just after noon tomorrow. On Monday, Colombo will be at the mercy of the sun, with the star being directly above the city, while it will beam down on Jaffna on the 10th. With the soaring temperatures forecast beyond the next week, precautionary measures to stave off the heat comes into play.
It is likely that we might see an increase in diarrhea, with people drinking impure water owing to clean water shortage. So we urge the public to drink boiled water. We can easily prevent the ill effects of heat just by avoiding exposure to intense heat. It is important that we pay more attention to children, the elderly and the sick.
The prevailing dry weather conditions have resulted in the drastic decrease in water levels at various reservoirs, especially Kasalri and Mausa-Kale. The ruins of Kadadora temple in the Kotmale reservoir have surfaced owing to the severe drought. Meanwhile, given the phase the country is expected to face, the hottest temperatures to prevail this year so far, sporadic unannounced water cuts aren't in any way helpful. People in several areas say that their water supply was halted without any prior notice.
Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal today rejected the appeal filed by Gampal Vidanage Samantha Kumara, alias Velesuda, over the death sentence imposed against him by the Colombo High Court. The appeal was taken up before a bench consisting of Justices Deepal Vijay Sundara and Achala Vengapulli. Gampala Vidanage Samantha Kumara was given capital punishment in 2015 over possession of heroin. However, Velesuda appealed against the verdict, stating that the manner in which the High Court had imposed the sentence on him was against the law, and sought an order quitting him from the charges. Chairman of Perpetual Treasuries Limited Jeffrey Aloysius, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank P. Samarasiri, and 3 PTL directors have been granted bail by the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court today. However, all 5 of them were barred from leaving the country by the court. Business news on the other side, so make sure you stay tuned for that.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
The management of the Sri Lankan Airlines announced the formulation of a new 5-year strategic business plan in a bid to revive the fortunes of the loss-making carrier. The strategy aims to transform the airline into a financially viable airline group with high brand visibility, with one of the key features being route expansion, including to Europe, which is in stark contrast to the strategy adopted under the former CEO Suren Ratwatta. Issuing a media communique, the national carrier said that the strategic business plan put together from 2019 to 2024 will be put forward for government approval. Issuing a communique, Sri Lankan Airlines say a key aspect of the strategic business plan includes developing a route network to match customer demand and market opportunities, including new destinations in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, the Far East and Australia, as opposed to the current limited point-to-point strategy. It also focuses on selecting a fleet that is cost-effective and best matches the requirement of the route network, enhancing the customer experience, adopting best practices to improve productivity, growing online sales to reach a wider market in a more cost-effective manner, greater employee engagement, and implementing a competitive cost structure through a greater cost consciousness throughout the company. The strategic business plan also calls for the strengthening of the route network through code-share partnerships and alliances, especially by optimizing opportunities with One World member airlines. According to the communique, the strategic business plan also includes a new vision, mission and company values for the national carrier. The communique goes on to say that digital transformation and technology adoption to transform processes across the airline have been identified as top priorities. Meanwhile, a report has emerged which says that Chinese banks fell from the list of top 20 infrastructure lenders in the region, forcing them to recalibrate their appetite for risk on overseas infrastructure financing this year, as well as developing countries struggle to repay debts. China's Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion plan to build ports, roads and bridges across Eurasia and into Africa, has delivered a boost to the bank's overseas activity. That said, the BRI received harsh criticism in recent months for lending to countries such as Pakistan, the Maldives, Malaysia as well as Sri Lanka that could not pay back the loans. A report published in Financial Times says over the past decade, government-controlled lenders such as China Development Bank, ICBC and Bank of China have risen up the ranks to become Asia's largest players in infrastructure finance. Quoting data company Dealogic, it says between 2016 and 2018, China Development Bank held the top ranking for the sector in Asia, lending to projects valued at $38.9 billion over the past 3 years. In 2016, at the peak of China's overseas building spree, Chinese banks held 6 of the 7 top lending spots, lending $35.4 billion. But this year, it says the mega lenders pull back as they prize in elevated risk connected to struggling infrastructure projects and angry foreign governments. The report quotes Head of Corporate Finance for Greater China and North Asia at Standard Chartered Peter Barnett as saying that Chinese authorities are looking at the Belt and Road Initiative with much more commercial rigor. According to Dealogic, in the first 3 months of the year, Chinese banks fell from the list of the top 20 infrastructure lenders in the region. The report says that China Development Bank, ICBC, Bank of China and China Construction Bank had not taken part in any projects during that time. The trend marks a stark shift from 2 years earlier, when Chinese banks were gaining a reputation for underwriting projects that other institutions would not touch. Quoting a banker, the news report said that in tourism-related projects in the region, a Chinese bank asked for a feasibility study to help guarantee it could recover the loan. The relevant banker, who works on Asian infrastructure deals, has said that, quote, it's part of a general shift around BRI connected to global public commentary on Chinese projects, and there has definitely been a greater awareness around risk, unquote. The Osha price index closed in red as a result of price losses in counters such as Hemas Holdings, Carson's, Cumberbatch and Ceylon Tobacco Company, with a turnover crossing to 219 million rupees. A similar behavior was also witnessed in the SMPSL 20. Meanwhile, total foreign sales accounted for 61.1% of the turnover. With that, we have Siobhan Mendes from NDB Securities with full report on how the stocks performed during the week.
During the week, the ASPI gained 1.2%, mainly due to price gains in counters such as Dialog Asiata, Sri Lanka Telecom and LOLC Holdings. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 edged up by 0.1%. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 416 million rupees. Diversified sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, whilst the second highest was seen in banks, finance and insurance sector. Furthermore, foreigners remained active for the week, closing as net buyers, where foreign purchasers accounted for 61% of the total weekly turnover.
Well, international news is on this other side, so make sure you stay tuned for more.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
British Prime Minister Theresa May wrote to European Council President Donald Tusk today asking to delay Brexit until the 30th of June to allow divide British lawmakers to agree a withdrawal deal. In her letter, May said the United Kingdom proposes that this period should end on the 30th of June this year. She added that if an agreement was reached before this date, then Britain proposed that the extension should be ended early.
Theresa May has written to the European Union to request a further delay to Brexit until the 30th of June. On Wednesday, the lower house of the British Parliament approved legislation which would force Prime Minister May to seek a Brexit delay to prevent a potentially disorderly departure on the 12th of this month without a deal. The Prime Minister has proposed that if UK MPs approve a deal in time, the UK should be able to leave before European parliamentary elections on the 23rd of May. But she said that UK would prepare to field candidates in those elections in case no agreement is reached. EU leaders must agree unanimously whether to grant an extension to the Article 50 process under which the UK leaves the EU after MPs repeatedly rejected the withdrawal agreement reached between the UK and the bloc. The British House of Lords meanwhile held a debate yesterday on the bill that rules out no deal and delays Britain's departure from the European Union. Due to the strong opposition from the pro-Brexit lawmakers in the upper house of the parliament, the debate lasted a long time with no result reached. In the meantime, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that the EU will do everything in order to prevent a no-deal Brexit, which requires the UK to cooperate and clarify its stance. As an effort to safeguard interests of EU citizens, the European Parliament yesterday approved a law granting UK citizens the right to stay in the EU visa-free for up to 90 days in any 180-day period after Brexit.
Meanwhile, the United States has revoked the entry visa for the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Fatou Bensouda. The decision is thought to be the US response to Bensouda's investigation into possible war crimes by American forces and their allies in Afghanistan. The US Secretary of State has warned that US might refuse or revoke visas to any ICC staff involved in such probes. Bensouda's office said the ICC prosecutor would continue to her duties without fear or favor. Secretary of the State Mike Pompeo said that anyone responsible for the proposed ICC investigation of US personnel in connection with the situation in Afghanistan should not expect entry to the United States. He added that the US is prepared to take additional steps, including economic sanctions, if the ICC does not change its course. A 2016 report from the ICC said there was a reasonable basis to believe the US military had committed torture at secret detention sites in Afghanistan operated by the CIA, and that the Afghan government and the Taliban had committed war crimes. The world's richest man, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, and his wife Mackenzie have agreed a record-breaking divorce settlement of at least $35 billion. Ms. Bezos keeps a 4% stake in the online retail giant, worth $35.6 billion on its own. Amazon was founded by Jeff Bezos in Seattle in 1994, a year after the couple married, and Ms. Bezos was one of its first employees. Both parties tweeted positive comments about the other in the wake of the announced settlement. According to Forbes, the Amazon shares alone will make Ms. Bezos the world's third richest woman, while Jeff will remain the world's richest person. Sri Lanka cricketing legend Mahela Jayawardene is critical of the Sri Lankan Cricket Board for lack of preparation surrounding the selection of the national team for the ICC World Cup set to get underway in May. Speaking to cricketing website, the former captain lamented that politics and a dubious selection process is hurting cricketers of the island nation. The team did not have much success leading up to the World Cup, with disappointing performances against England, New Zealand and more recently a 5-0 loss to South Africa at home. He also took aim at the board for organising a provincial one-day tournament out of the blue. However, Jayawardene hailed several cricketers, saying that the situation isn't alarming as the country's got talent. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.